Welcome back. Today we have a preview for an expanded deluxe edition of Liftoff, Get Me Off This Planet from Pencil First Games. This one is on Kickstarter right now, and it is a game in which the planet that you live on is exploding and you have to get your aliens off that planet.
Yeah, if you can imagine a light-hearted game about getting off a planet before it blows up or is destroyed, that is this game.
So there's a lot of changes from the first edition if you already have that. We'll talk about that as we start to explain the game. So it's very simple. When you set up the game, you're going to see this completely modular round board that you're going to be setting up. This is made up of 8 total segments, 4 of which are exit points, and 4 of them which are liftoff points. The idea is that all of your aliens are in the core, and you have to move them up through the exit points, get them on liftoff points, and then send them up into space.
Yeah, and that's not quite as simple as it sounds. It's simple to play, but not quite as simple to execute, because these launch pads are all going to have a variety of different sort of objectives that you have to fulfill in order to get on the launch pad. Some launch pads only allow a certain number of aliens. Some will only launch in certain circumstances. So there's a lot to take in, and the game is extraordinarily variable because all of these, like Jeremy said, are double-sided, so you can flip them over and have all sorts of new rules for every time you play.
The game is going to be played in rounds depending upon the number of players. If you have a 4-player game set up, we have it on the 4-day track, meaning there's going to be 4 full rotations of the moon around this particular planet. If you play with less players, it's going to actually move down. If at any time this actually reaches the explosion, the game is over, and whoever has had the most aliens escape the planet is going to win. Now, the core of the game is moving this moon around the particular planet. Each time that you take a turn, after you're done with your turn, this is going to rotate counterclockwise until it makes a full rotation, moving that day track down.
Yeah, and we'll get to how that impacts the game in a moment, but just understand that that is going to have a significant impact on all of the different launch pads and how and when they can launch.
So to start the game, each of the players is going to get 4 cards dealt to them randomly. These cards have a wide variety of different functions, and we'll talk about these in a moment. However, to set up the game, you're going to place the full moon on top of the star, and you're going to take 4 of the exit points, and it suggests in the game that you play with the 4 basic exit points at the start of the game. As David already alluded to, each of these exit points are double-sided, so there's a wide variety of different exit points that you may have to navigate through the game to make it a little bit more variable. Then you're going to have 4 different liftoff spots that are in every other space. Again, these are variable as well. There are 10 different ones of these, and all of them are double-sided, meaning there's 20 different liftoff spaces, all have different requirements. And you're going to set this up randomly to start the game. Each of the players is going to place 10 other aliens in the center. These are the meeples that you're trying to remove out of the core and launch into space. Once each player has their 4 cards in their hand, they're going to go through their actions, and the actions of the game are extremely simple.
Yeah, on your turn, it's going to be very simple. You're going to move twice. Now, this can mean moving one of your aliens twice or moving 2 of your aliens once. But when you move, you're simply going to be, in the basic game, moving up one of these exit points, that's 1, and then potentially moving him over toward a launch pad. Now, this doesn't mean you're on the launch pad, but you're in that area. Or you could move 2 of them up that way. So you can see there's not much to movement, but there's really not much area on the game board either.
And remember, these movements through the lift tubes could be different depending upon the different types of ones you wish to play with. Here we have the pump car, which is going to react a little bit differently in the game. Rather than simply moving one of your guys straight up, when you move through this area, you have to bring one of your opponents with you for 1 action point. And that's important because you may be wanting to get one of the launch pads on this side, so you're going to be wanting to spend less movement points in order to get to that particular location. Other than movement, there's a wide variety of other actions that you can take on your turn, as many as you wish, as long as you have the right types of cards or actions in order to do so. One of those is playing one of your action cards. And there's a wide variety of these different cards that you can possibly play, all of them having different possibilities when you play them. One of them, for instance, is the actual move your alien. So this is going to allow you to play this card to move your alien another spot, or move additional alien 1 spot.
And a couple other cards you're going to see a lot of are the screws and the fuel. These are effectively used on some of the launch pads to stand up on the launch pad. For example, this one right here. If I had moved one of my aliens to this spot, you can see that to stand up on the launch pad, it's going to take 1 fuel and 1 screw. I would just discard those right here under that launch pad and stand up on the launch pad.
And it's important to note that each one of these different liftoff points is going to have a number of different things that are printed on the actual tile. As David already alluded to, on the right-hand side of each of these launch pads, it's going to show you what it requires from your hand in order to set up or stand up one of your aliens on that particular launch pad that's on the liftoff spot. And you can pay those costs as many times as you have the cards in your hand. So if you have multiple guys in this location, if you can pay 1 fuel and 1 screw, you could stand up multiple people. The number of actions you can take is just limited to the number of cards that you have in your hand. While over here, it's going to require you 2 screws in order to stand up your aliens on the spot. Another portion that you need to know about each of these different liftoff spots is the number of aliens that it can hold. This one can hold 6, this one can hold 3, 4, and 1. And that's important because they can be multiples of different players. It's not just your aliens that can be on that spot. The final thing you need to know is that each of these also across the top is going to show you what it requires in order for all the aliens that are standing up on that launch pad to be lifted into space. And that could lift your aliens in combination with other players.
Yeah, and it's important to note too that some of these launch pads have liftoff costs and the cost to stand up on the launch pad kind of combined. In fact, this one right here, you're going to have to take note of where the moon is and then pay the required fuel. And it's only going to launch one alien, but he stands up immediately and then launches immediately. That's not exactly how all of them work.
And it's important to note that each one of these liftoff spots has their own liftoff costs, just as David alluded to, and they're going to change depending upon where the moon is at that portion of the game. Now, the moon can be looked at in 3 different ways. If it is directly above that particular liftoff spot, it is a full moon, and you're going to have to pay the cost of that full moon action spot. Like this one's going to require you to roll a die. But if it is a new moon or a half moon, it's going to have different requirements. If it is on the opposite side, so if he's wanting to lift off from this side, then it is a new moon, which is the dark side of the moon. However, it's on any other spot that's not a full or a new, it is a half moon. So each of these has requirements that you have to pay attention to and prepare for in order to get those aliens to launch into space.
Yeah, not only is the moon going to move between turns, but there are also cards that allow you to move the moon. So if you know someone is trying to prepare on one of the launch pads, you might be able to move that moon right on past them or back away from them, really kind of messing with their turn.
Outside of lifting off, the final action that you can take on your turn is to trade any 2 cards face up into the discard pile to draw 1 card off the top of the deck. And you can do that, again, as many times as you have cards in order to cycle cards that you want to have into your hand. And there's a large variety of different cards that we've already alluded to. A lot of these are the screws and the fuels that you need in order to set up your aliens and place them on the launch pad, but there's also ones that are going to mess with other players at the table.
Yeah, the big one is the Garglor. This guy has a little miniature right here in the core of the planet, and this card. When this guy is on a launch pad, because when you play this card, you're able to put him on one of the launch pads, it effectively makes it so no one can launch from that until he's moved. And that guy's only going to move when someone else plays another one of these cards.
And the final 2 things that you're going to do on your turn, one is to move the moon counterclockwise 1 space. 2 things can happen. If it ever hits the star and does a full rotation around the planet, you're going to move this day track down 1 space. If it hits the explosion, you're going to count up all the aliens that you have on your escape pod. The person with the most is going to win. The second thing that happens at any time this makes a full rotation and hits the star is no matter where the Garglor is, you're going to put him back into the core of the planet, meaning that wherever he is on the planet, you can launch from those areas once again. And you're going to do this around and around until either the planet explodes or one of the players has all 10 of their aliens on their escape pod. So that is Liftoff, Get Me Off This Planet. Now the thing we want to stress most about this is the additions or the expanded deluxe edition, what it adds to the game. One of them is now you can play this solo. So it plays solo. It used to play 1 to 5 players, but now it plays 1 to 6 players as well.
Yeah, a couple more things. I mean, it has some components like the escape pods where you put your aliens, and there's a bunch of different game modes too. They've got family modes where you take some of the more interactive cards out, and a lot of variability, of course.
Yeah, the most important thing, obviously, is the inclusion of double the amount of liftoff spots and double the amount of the exit spots. Those exit spots are going to change the way that you move your aliens drastically. They're going to have more interaction in the game. And then, of course, the liftoff spots provide a huge range of different abilities and combinations of cards you have to have in order to stand them up and then get them off the planet. So that is Liftoff Expanded Deluxe Edition. If you have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do. And we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.